Hundreds of delegates are expected to attend the 5th Southern African Metals and Engineering Indaba taking place in Johannesburg later this week. The event brings together policymakers, labour representatives and businesses who together will discuss challenges facing the metals and engineering sector. And for more on this, we're joined by Economist at the Steel and Engineering Industries Federation of Southern Africa, Marique Kruger. Marique, very good evening and thank you so much for watching, for joining us rather.
Thank you.
Just how ready is this sector to take advantage of the benefits offered by the African Continental Free Trade Area?
The newly launched African Continental Free Trade Area provides a perfect platform for increased exports within the African continent. And especially if you look at the fact that the Continental Free Trade Area is now also officially the largest free trade area globally.
Okay. And I mean, the big issue perhaps on the agenda is the growing Chinese presence on the African continent and how businesses, particularly African businesses, should respond.
Yes. Given the current socio-economic challenges and the need for both business and government policymakers to have discussions and ask the relevant questions, we feel that the Indaba is actually the perfect platform to discuss these issues, of which one would be the growing impact of Chinese companies within the domestic economy and also its impact on manufacturing going forward.
You know, Marique, just in the interest of evaluating the relationship between China and in particular South Africa, should China be viewed through the prism of a global player offering aid and loans as a potential bait to ostensibly recolonize the African continent, or should it be viewed through the prism as of a key strategic partner in the BRICS sector?
I think it would be the latter in terms of seeing China as a key strategic partner in the BRICS spectrum, specifically because there's a need for growth, not only within the metals and engineering sector, but also within the domestic economy, to grow the domestic economy, and that growth needs to come from within.
Yeah, and then there's always been this growing antagonism between the labor movement and capital. I mean, how do both narratives break down this massive Great Wall of China in between them?
Look, I think it's a very interesting topic and one that's always going to be up for debate. For now, I think all eyes are on the metals and engineering wage negotiations, which are taking place in 2020, and we do hope that the outcome of that will be amicable and that all parties involved will reach negotiations and conclude them within a given perfect or a relevant time frame.
Yeah. And SAIFSA called on policymakers to protect the sector from internationally subsidized and I would say more efficient producers. So how would that cushion this factor from unfair labor practices, boost local production capacity and ensure increased competitiveness?
Look, increased competitiveness is key, one of the key factors in terms of growing the sector going forward. And one of the means in which to do that is through localization and designation. So there has been increased call from industry and various players and captains of industry to enhance the focus on localization and designation to improve competitiveness going forward.
And the infrastructure challenges facing the continent, how do we deal with that?
That's actually one of the interesting topics that will be discussed at the Indaba later during this week, is in terms of administered prices and logistics costs as impediments to growth domestically. So I'm actually looking forward to that plenary session because I do think that's one that's going to be very a heated debate, and one that I'm personally looking forward to. Okay,
and then there's this issue of tax holidays that are offered to foreign companies. I mean, when do rather local companies start taking advantage of such incentives, such as the relief on tariffs, for instance?
I think companies have to take it on a case-by-case basis and to determine what the outcome will be on the industry going forward, as opposed to just covering it with a blanket approach.
Okay. And just what are some of the sticking points and challenges that are currently facing this industry?
So I think for us, some of the largest challenges that we face is in the form of various headwinds that continuously face companies within the sector, is increasing logistics costs as a result of increasing fuel prices, then obviously increasing input costs, which impacts negatively on the margins of companies within the sector. And these together with the declining or the current economic environment that is very challenging is making it difficult for companies to plan their production processes ahead and obviously improve on production going forward.
So if an African country has got massive industrial potential, but then some of the laws governing that particular sector become the bottlenecks to development, how do companies make sure that the government are amenable or open to very fair labor practices or laws?
I think that's issues that will be addressed very thoroughly within the African Continental Free Trade Area, because if you it's not only tariff barriers that will be addressed, but it's also non-tariff barriers. Those barriers such as the mountains of paperwork that companies have to deal with in order for them to trade with other companies, with companies and countries within the continent. So these issues are issues that will be addressed within the free trade area with the aim of improving intra-African trade for all countries within the continent.
I want us to talk about the softening of African borders. Do you think it's a vital discussion to be tackled insofar as ensuring the movement of goods within the continent?
Again, it's something I do think that will be covered within the African Continental Free Trade Area. And yes, with 90% of duty-free preferential rates of goods that are manufactured within the continent, the African Continental Free Trade Area provides a unique opportunity for companies domestically and within the metals and engineering sector to actually expand.
All right. Marique, we appreciate your time. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Well, that was a SEIFSA economist, Marique Kruger. This is The Globe on SAPC News. We'll have more in a moment.